because we can't start talking about what can be done to build confidence without identifying the weaknesses. And I'm happy that Honorable Mliswa has touched on the issue of ZEC and its lack of independence. I differ with him on who to blame for it, because I do think that ZEC as an institution has the capacity, both institutionally and the human factor, to be able to assert itself and be independent in the way that it conducts its work. One of the weaknesses of ZEC, in my opinion, is that it is very rigid, very legalistic, and we have seen of late that it also there's a lack of professionalism among some of its personnel, the arrogance, which seems to treat voters, citizens as if they were enemies, and yet they are supposed to be serving citizens. And I think those are aspects that are really important about the elections management body. The use of common sense, being flexible, using discretion in how it deals with issues, as opposed to being too rigid in what it does. If ZEC really wanted to assert itself, it has the capacity and potential to do so. But unfortunately, it hasn't maximized on that. But it's important, Lynette, to look at the factors beyond ZEC's independence, because we can narrow it down to ZEC and lose sight of the various other factors that impede confidence in the electoral system. And allow me to go through some of them. So, number one, apart from the electoral management body issue, there's the issue of the voters' roll and voter registration. The voters' roll is the register that determines whether or not a person can vote. An exam system, to use another analogy, can only be credible if there is a criteria by which people qualify to be part of that exam. A football competition can only be credible if there is a clear criteria by which teams are eligible for that competition. Now, the voters' roll in Zimbabwe has not been clean for many years, going back to the days of Tubayo Mdede when he was the Registrar General. It has always been problematic, and it is still problematic. People will lose confidence in the electoral process if they do not trust the voters' roll, if they do not trust the process by which people are being registered to vote. If the voter registration process is too exclusionary, in the sense that it does not allow certain people to participate in the election, even though they are citizens, then people will lose confidence in it. Young people who are trying to register to vote, they are struggling to do so because they are not able to get national IDs. Now, that may not be ZEC's problem, but that's a problem of the political system, which needs to be attended to. The bias of other political referees, and in this regard, I put a number of institutions, including the police, including the judiciary, and also the public media. All these are critical players. I continue to use the same analogy because I think people can relate to it. When you see pundits commentating on a football match, and you realize that they are only supporting one of the football teams, they are only seeing faults of one football team and extolling the virtues of one, people are likely to switch off. I mean, I switch off on some of the punditry that I see on television, because I realize the moment they come, they're going to be biased, and I don't want to waste my time with them. And that is, precisely the same thing that we have with you do so through newspapers. But when these are controlled by one political party and they constantly spew propaganda, again, people lose confidence in the electoral system because they realize that the system is unfair. We have seen how police, during this by-elections campaign, have consistently, and I think Honorable Mlisco can testify to his own experiences when he was contesting for elections in the past, have consistently and systematically been banning one political party's rallies, allowing rallies of the ruling party and another political party, the MTCT. uh, when you are a CC supporter, Triple C supporter, it becomes very difficult to have confidence in a process where the referees, in this case the police, are quite openly biased and using a selective application of the law in order to advance the interests of other political parties. Now, this is totally contrary to what our constitution says, but this is happening. As I have mentioned, the public media, we have a very good case, again, which, in my opinion, has done a huge amount of damage to confidence in the electoral process. I can imagine if you are a voter in, I think it's Chegut West, where Dex Sanduna is an illegitimate MP of that constituency, because elections management body, with the powers that it has, failed to correct a simple thing in order to make sure that people are properly represented. That, of course, undermines the people's confidence in the electoral process. So, announcement of results, very important. When results are not announced within a reasonable time, in the shortest amount of time possible, people begin to doubt the credibility of results. You only have to go back to 2008. After the March 29 election, we waited for probably 5 to 6 weeks, if not more, before getting the presidential election result. Now, how are people supposed to have confidence in the electoral system when you have what would have been happening during that process? There can only be one outcome, that the results were being cooked in order to achieve a particular outcome, which was favorable to the ruling party, which was favorable to the incumbent president. We also saw, our electoral system here needs to change. It says results can be announced, within 5 days. I think that needs to change, because it allows a ZEC, as Honorable Blisco would say, to wait until the fifth day, and they can say, well, what we are doing is lawful. But being lawful and being reasonable, using common sense in how to deal with a sensitive political issue, are two different things. And I would wish, ZEC would change the way that he does things. But in the absence of that, I think that we need to really have a look at the Electoral Act and change the timing with it. There's no reason why you are counting votes of parliamentary candidates at the same time you're counting votes of the president, but you announce these results at different times. It doesn't make any sense at all. That needs to change. And of course, like I said, the issue of political violence. We can't talk about confidence in the electoral process without making reference about the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and how the Constitution tries to protect it, and there are very many provisions which try to protect it. But as long as we have militarization, not just of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, they have admitted that they have security personnel within their ranks. They even admitted that they are assisting in accreditation of voters for these by-elections, which is completely illegal. ZEC doesn't have to do that. And in my opinion, these are some of the factors that impede confidence in the electoral process. And I haven't even spoken about gerrymandering of constituencies, which we are going to be seeing over the next few months, when delimitation takes place. But I thought, Lynette, before we even talk about how to build confidence, how to make things better,